After an incredibly successful US campaign, we are back at it again. TNO, Japan. Don't think I've ever played them, so I'm pretty much just gonna explore it. This might not be the optimal path, but maybe one day in the future we'll play the most min-maxy Japan that we can and expand the Daitwa Kyoeiken Pact to its fullest extent. Kind of what I want to do with the OFN. Either way, let's just jump into it. Get a report of the Empire. And also, apparently, I've didn't realize, but a lot of people hate TNO, citing the fact that it lost its unhingedness and tried to be as realistic as possible. And I kind of get that, but I'm still enjoying TNO, and I probably will be playing this unless they really fuck it up sometime in the future. But I guess really people really want that landmass back in for Italy in here, the closing off of the Mediterranean. At least the big old lake is here still, right? And more schizopaths in general, which I fully understand, to be honest. But I also do enjoy the base game TNO, and I feel like it's a problem that could be solved fairly easily. Well, fairly easily. It's no oversimplification. But isn't that basically what happened with Kaiserreich? People didn't like the overly realistic route that they wanted to go with, so they made Kaiser Redux. Why can't people make TNO Redux? Well, obviously the massive amount of time and effort you'd have to put into it. It could be good, no? I would love to play a TNO Redux with like the most unhinged paths, bring Goering back, give some kind of weird schizo Ottoman path to Turkey or something. And I'd love to see even more ridiculousness in the TNO universe. But for that, we're not here for that today. Maybe one day in the future that'll exist. For now, we're here doing politics in Japan. I don't know what this means. We're currently conservative. We're fairly stable. We'll see how that goes. I'll learn how to do the political tree one day. The Eye of the Storm. That was the only way Prime Minister Ino Hiroya could describe it. In the North Pacific, two massive fleets were bearing down upon each other. Across Japan, from the smallest village to the Imperial Palace, the people were outraged. Yet here, in the offices of the Foreign Ministry, everything was silent and still. On the other side of the table, Foreign Minister Fujiyama Aishiro was on the phone, listening to a report on the first mediation proposal. Ever since the Americans forced Captain Aso to ground the Alaskan waters, Japan has been in the grips of a jingoistic fervor unlike anything since 1941. The Army, Navy, and Privy Council were all pulling Ino into different directions. It felt like half the country was telling him how to do his job. At last, Fujiyama set the phone down. The Mexican president has taken our side, demanding the release of our pilot and an investigation into all violations of the demilitarized zone. Nixon was less than pleased, but Mateos held firm. Let's see if we can spin it to our advantage, huh? I think we had a stalemate as US. Maybe we can get something out of him in here instead. Big strategic bombers and interceptors as well. Are we making any helicopters? We should be. Yeah, we are making some improved transports, but that's not really what I want. Do not have any attack helicopters. Yeah. We need a lot of airplanes, really. Are we making any artillery as well? I don't really see that. For not, I do want some artillery. Although we might make artillery. IFEs, MPTs. Ah, there's the artillery. I just didn't see it. My bad. Things are heating up, but we have one last shot at peace. We can now send aid to the military government in Shonan Marai, which is the Malayan one. Okay. How many units can we send into Malaya? Currently 2. I would have preferred to send 2 helicopter divisions, but I guess 1 helicopter division and a regular infantry will have to do. And 2 air wings. That's not bad either. Have all of my helicopters come back. This is the only thing. Improved jet fighters. Oh, we actually need 2. Let's see if I can gather everything up, because our air force is atrocious. This and this we'll send down here for air superiority. Good. Maybe let's slow down as well. Another door opens. U.S. maneuvering in the Pacific, Nixon and State Department untrustworthy. Arms flooding to insurgents via Indian Ocean route. But now it seems the game has started again. Underneath the placidity of a military bureaucrat grew the quiet excitement of a field agent. The spy demanding action once more. If Tokyo needed a fire lit on the Ganges, he would see that it would dwarf even the Himalayas. And here we are demanding the release for Captain Asso. 3 hours of it was absent. The investigation into treaty violations, Nixon's DMZ violations, 2 solemn nods, and Mateos was dismissed. It was Fujiyama that spoke first. To let such injustice pass is a gift only to warmongers and villains. But after Kiska, we will brief the cabinet. We will inform the Emperor there was no other way. But the Americans will come to rue the day they opened this box. Oh, what's this? Happy New Year, Hayato. Are you alright? Quite so. Prime Minister Ino Hiroya opened the first session of the Diet of the year, declaring that this year would be a year of continued prosperity for the Japanese people and that the Pan-Asianist ideology has gone 1 year closer to its realization. Hayato just sighed. Here we go again. Welcome to Japan's House of Cards. As with any House of Cards, the Diet's rocky balance is dependent on alliances, deals, and tribulations that all have a date of expiration. Every year from now, the House of Cards will be rebalanced to reflect such occurrences. To manage it, the House of Cards decision category is now available. It can be used to increase relations with other factions or to see the progress until the next balance check. I'm guessing, yeah, it's in here. We can guarantee the support of at least 226 MPs to vote with us on any bill. We don't have quite enough. We need better relations with, let's see. The Conservatives are great. We have excellent relations with them. Democrats are terrible. I think we need the Independents. Let's improve relations. We're almost there. I'm guessing I need that for something in the future, so I'll preemptively go at it. And our troops have indeed arrived. Move in, boys. Let's get a planning bonus as well, eh? Also, yeah, staff office planning. Get that up quicker. I don't want our poverty rate to rapidly worsen, but we can definitely click this one right here. There we go. We're breaking through right away. Even though we only have 1 helicopter unit, they can't really stop us. Okay, we'll stop attacking for now. Hitler names Speer his successor. That wouldn't be too bad, I think. They're not aligned to us, but none of the successors are, I think. Next up, let's do the financial analysis and get a little bit of stability. Currently, our stability is pretty dang good, so Still are at 32. Let's improve relations with the technocrats next. We have at least poor relations with everyone. It's not great, but it's a good start. No one's atrocious or terrible. Manchuria reports exceptional growth. Although we do know from our Guangdong campaign that's gonna stagnate, sadly. I can only hope Guangdong goes to a path that gives us a lot of money. Hey, what the hell? Why did it get in there? No, get back. Did we somehow lose our port? Our airport at some point? I don't think so. That's probably why we had a tough time. Now we should no longer have a tough time pushing in. China reports positive growth. That's also okay-ish. Could be better, could be worse. Uh-oh. There seems to be a brawl going on. Local garrisons have been requested by the outer Manchurian authorities to help control, and the local police commissioner has put out a statement. The recent violence and historic tensions between settlers and natives of outer Manchuria can find its origin in issues of societal, or social and economic disparity. Bengali textiles. We do need to get ourselves an Indian collaborator. These two might unify eventually. We just hope it's going to be under Azad Hind. There we go. Push in, my dude. East India delivers an honest answer. Last of the nations due to send their economic reports to Tokyo's Azad Hind. The reports on the economic of Free India outlined over 3 pages in text, charts, and graphs with stark truths of East India's economy. It did not outline a disaster situation. The economy was in fact managing to stay afloat, but at a level far below the expectations of Japanese projections. Let's hope that next year at least it'll prove a little bit more promising. And let's show it to the public. There we go. No, don't let them take this tile. Good. Damn it. They've retaken it. It's those goddamn Americans. Let's see, let's supply some stuff. Do a little bit of this. I don't want to authorize bombing. I don't want to make my citizens poorer. So this one, can I mayhaps make it into an... Yeah, we almost have enough airplanes. Attack helicopters. We need to make more, but we're well on our way. Shoot this guy, right? Because I didn't even see. We got bad shit going on down in the south. Let me clean that up real quick. Should be doable. Do I have enough? Yeah, I do have enough artillery for 1 artillery piece into my helicopter division. Okay, now ensure continued prosperity. Our government stability will increase, and security policy will increase in effectiveness. Okay, that's not bad. Oh, this would be perfect. I will have Malacca encircled. Kill off this one unit that's in there. It'll make our time a little bit easier. Oh no, you guys, you don't have to help me with the encirclement. It's fine. Yeah, now you want to walk in. Okay, I see how it is. And we seem to have one, although I didn't really push in that much. What does that do then? We still have this, so I don't know how that works. I guess it's bugged, maybe? Oh well. Sasakawa wants funding. Kante received a letter from famous philanthropist and innovative entrepreneur Sasakawa Ryoichi. He is establishing a new oil company based around the Karafuto fields, and he's wondering if Ino's government would be interested in subsidizing this enterprise. The prospecting operation was successful, and a large and profitable field was found. Certainly a good idea. Ino is, however, unsure if the best is to handle the request within the Kante or give it to Kishi Nobusuke. Ino will handle the request personally. I think that's what I'm gonna go for. I looked into some console commands as well. I don't know how to get rid of this. Having decided to handle the matter of the new Karafuto oil fields himself, it's now time for Prime Minister Ino to determine the appropriate amount of funding. Subsidizing the oil field would be no cheap matter, as was the case with anything involving oil extraction. There were risks to consider as well. Caution suggesting that only a small sum should be given to Sasakawa. Yet other voices suggested that Sasakawa's business in Karafuto was more than sound enough to deserve a general investment. The reward would surely be great. You know what? More funding than usual. Let's see. This can only end well. And after this month ticks over, I'll just load the game up again. Maybe that'll fix it. It's the first time that happened to me, though. No need to go overboard. There's even more prisons. God, okay. Make as many as we can. Yeah, let me save as well and then reload the game. Maybe that'll fix it. It might have something to do with the fact that I tagged over, maybe. Because when I booted up the game, I started off as a lead, and I was like, you know what? I've never actually played Japan, so I tagged over. Okay, that's why? I mean, I've tagged over in the past before. It never did anything like it, so I wouldn't know. Please. That did not fix it. You know what? I'll restart the campaign. It's only been like half a year. It's gonna bother me, and I feel like it's gonna distract me from the fact that if I get another global conflict, it will be not as easy as it is currently to see. It went a lot quicker this time around. It's February still. I just yeeted myself in really quickly instead of letting it become a slog. And it's gone. Fix it. I'm not gonna give in to the greed of Sasakawa. That number is correct, sir. We will arrest and torture you if you do not give us profits. A mysterious desert. Sasakawa's up to no good. Yeah, I'm gonna smack his ass. Silence? Search the scene. And there it is, the arrest of Sasakawa. A mysterious letter threatening the life of Prime Minister could not go disregarded, especially when it could be quickly tied to a suspect with plenty of reason to send it. Upon the advice of his closest confidant, the Prime Minister would go ahead with an arrest. If that mogul is willing to kill me over disagreement over subsidies, then he's better off behind bars. Who knows what he might even have killed in the past over something like this. I need you to arrange a high-profile arrest. Fu Sasakawa Ryoichi. Now get to done. One less troublesome Keiretsu stooge to deal with. This is definitely not blow up in my own face. Now we're searching the scene. As always, documenting every aspect of the scene would take time, and if done too quickly, it might fail to capture what they needed at all. Break out the latex gloves. The detective failed to find anything of interest in the area immediately around where the body was being found. Someone might as well have gone over it a few times with a mop before they arrived. As he stepped outside, however, and began walking towards the south end of the massive concrete building, he smelled something. Faint, sharp odor of burning paper. Just in the nick of time, he's found some files. He's got a bunch of helping hands, that Sasakawa. Let's find them. Scan, the politician undermines the emperor. Yukio slipped out the door just outside the National Diet, wearing a long brown coat and deep-shaded glasses. He held his fedora as he skipped down the steps, ushering himself out of the view of the crowd of the press. A microphone was hurled in his face, prompting him to answer for his crimes. Akiyama cleared his throat and explained his criticism of extrajudicial killings in northwestern China by the military, even detailing his support for the same legal system in which the emperor was the sovereign of. Who cares about the truth indeed? We are an autocracy. Twins of death, they found another body. But where the previous victor's character had been smooth and deliberate, with neatly traced line. This one was shaky and jagged. The killer must have been in a hurry. This wasn't carefully planned, premeditated murder. This was on a whim, or perhaps out of necessity. Not enough. Per our agreement, you are scheduled to meet our associates at exactly 7 minutes past noon, where the disposal equipment will be returned to you. Our associate has been told to expect a man wearing basic military fatigues, brown shoes, and a facial scar above the right eye. Ensure you strictly adhere to this description. We sympathize with your concerns, Mr. Takahara. However, we assure you that when the job is complete, you will be paid for your time. I guess it wasn't personal, huh? Oh? Do we pay into Indonesia, which will strengthen the government of Indonesia? Yeah. We want them to stay in control, after all. This was supposed to be nothing than a murder investigation, same procedure as always. The detective had done his part of finding the body, so he sent on to the morgue like he always did. The ambulance drove for about 5 minutes before the bomb that had been stuffed in the corpse's chest cavity went off. Of course, everyone heard the blast right away, but by the time the police arrived on scene, all that was left was smoldering wreck. By some miracle, the driver of the ambulance managed to survive the initial blast. They found him collapsed a few meters from the driver. After 6 hours of surgery, the driver was pronounced dead. Now this is personal indeed. Do want to find this guy. Nothing was left of the body. As for the bomb that had caused a horrifying blast, very little of it was left in any useful capacity. But beyond that one string of numbers and letters on the file, the bomb succeeded in its purpose. The body it led had reached its bloody end. And Sasukawa indeed goes free. I feel like Ino was gonna die because of this, huh? Tracking down Officer Takahara was easy enough. They had him scheduled to be on call for Tokyo Central Police Station itself. Once there, with a quick flash of their badges and stern relaying of their intent, they were waved past the front desk and towards the general officer's hall. With a curt nod, the detective turned to the door at the far end of the room that had led back to the entrance of the station. When he pushed the heavy metal doors open, he saw no sign of Takahara, but he heard some hushed words float from around the corner. Not waiting for the rest of his team to come through the door, the detective briskly rounded the corner in search of the source. There he found himself face to face with Officer Takahara, who had been locked in conversation with another man who looked quite like him in passing, save for the deep scar above his right eye. There was a brief moment of silence as the three men stared at each other, but it lasted no longer than the time it took for them to reach for their weapons. The first sound was heard, the detectives shouting of police, and shots were fired. Who survived, though? The detective's vision was blurry. The shapes and colors of the world merged and melded with each other. The detective also became aware of the fact that the world around him was quite loud. The sounds appeared distant and garbled, but he had been so focused on looking, he had hardly noticed them at all. Requesting backup on our location immediately. We are not done. Tremors on the Burgundian soil and war in the desert. Name a more iconic duo. Turkey and finding the rest of the Middle East? Don't think you can. GDP growth? Yeah, definitely go for that. We want to get our economy more or less under control. Stage 2. The investigation gains momentum. Given this general sense of turmoil, it was all the more surprising when the chief gathered the department before him one morning and announced that the investigation was moving to its next stage. Teams would be reorganized to shift away from fieldwork and focus on filling the holes in the case with paper. Afterwards, the detective paused to run his eyes over the rows of silent, stone-faced men before him. No questions? Okay then. This is what we're gonna do. We've saved up a lot of political power. I wonder when we're gonna be able to spend it. Evidence suggests that the existence of a wider conspiracy does not in turn give clearance to boldly burst our way through the organs of state on the pretense of obstruction of justice. Rather, we must take the opposite position in a sense. We must carefully plan our actions before we take them, as well as anticipate and prepare for results of said actions. Previously, we had used our obligation to enforce the law like a hammer, smashing aside all obstacles to reveal the information we desire. Here, however, the key is superior to the battering ram. The fierce rivalries between and within the branches of military and government have encouraged the growth of a culture of underhanded opportunism. It permeates through the offices and conference rooms of administration and clouds the judgment of those within. That weakness we must exploit. The conditions that motivated the crime will be its perpetrator's undoing. It's going to be quite a task, though. Hayashi, please follow me to my room. We need to discuss the specific of Akane-chan's situation. I'm sure that you've been seen Akane-chan's symptoms over the last few weeks. I have. As a father, Hayashi could only give answers that might help speed his daughter's recovery and let the medicine man go to work. Do you know the cause? See, these photographs here, I know you're not the one to be peeved at this sort of thing, Hayashi. All the victims have the same kind of diet, fish or shellfish. But I think this factory over there might be suspect. Heavy metal poisoning. Akane is one of the lighter cases, but it'll be better if she doesn't eat fish from the Minamata area. Are you sure it's the fault of that factory? 70 to 80%, yeah. Hayashi immediately knew what to do. Oh, he's gonna do terrorism. Hell yeah. Smoke from the chief's detective cigarette wafted towards the ceiling as he leaned back in his office chair. It rippled past the frosted glass windows that separated his office from the common area that housed the desk of the department's office and detectives. Two of such detectives sat in front of him now, each in an uncomfortable metal chair, half a meter away from the hulking mess of polished wood that served as the chief's desk. What I'm trying to say, sir, he began, is that given the circumstances, it would make sense to establish an informal network inside key offices beforehand rather than try to build a network of contacts as we go along. What do you mean by informal, he asked. Unofficial connections mostly. Former contacts for old cases, friends of friends, old army buddies, whatever. People we could ask to take care of the pen and paper tasks that bureaucrats are usually not so motivated to do. All with the understanding that their efforts is deeply appreciated by the Tokyo Police Service, who will happily remember or forget their contributions depending on what they prefer. And because of the rather sensitive nature of the operation, we think that it's best to limit our networks to one major government working group. Otherwise, we risk alerting the conspirators if they find out half their office goes down for coffee at the station once a week. It's going to be years, I feel like, before we finish this investigation. For Hayashi, today should have been another day at work. As a soldier turned fisherman, he did not have much time for holidays or vacations. Takeshi and Akane depended on him, and at the very least, he would see them complete their education. To his children, as to his state, duty was everything. In the bright glare of the morning sunlight, near the factory's opening hours, as the winds were blowing out to the sea, and the local veterans stood by its gate, preventing anyone from leaving or entering. When the police came to dissuade them, they brandished their rifles and machetes, rendering no less dull nor deadly by the years spent in unuse. When the police threatened to evict them forcibly from the premises, they fired a warning shot. Finally, as a last resort, the police sent a friend of Hayashi's, a local bar owner, to meet with him. From a distance, he looked ridiculous. The skin and complexion of a man unused to exertion happened under the sunlight, much less in the early morning. Hayashi, have you gone mad? Have you gone cracked? If you stand down now, they'll let you go. You're a veteran, Hayashi, and they respect that. Not enough, apparently. Me and my boys have only one condition, a meeting with any official, scratch that, prefectural officials. I need someone who can do something regarding this monstrosity. That's all. I'll stand down once I know who I am talking to. By midday, the news had spread across the country. In the evening, it would reach the ears of Prime Minister Ino. A new scandal. Alright, and here we are trying to establish some more contacts. Do we talk to the taxman or the auditor? I've got an inkling for the auditor instead. Every day, Takeda drove Prime Minister Ino to his office in the National Diet. On the way there, they passed by a crowd of people going to work on foot, ready to earn their living. Ino, Takeda said to Ino, have you decided what to do with the Minamata veteran? He's everywhere in the news nowadays. Seemed like trouble. Takeda, it had slipped my mind earlier. Thank you for reminding me. You know, my father is a veteran. Fought in China and everything. If he knew that some bigwig corporation had put chemicals in my water, he would be enraged in the same way as the Minamata person. I sympathize, is all. You're not usually this talkative. Did you find what the man did righteous? No. I just found him understandable, coming from a veteran's family. When I was little, my father would usually wake up screaming. Now, he just sits on the veranda, under the eaves, his eyes blank. He felt as if his country had left him behind. The Minamata veteran might have a point. I think that's what I want to go for. Have you two handled the matter? I want to see that factory closed tomorrow. No operations would resume. No nothing. If I find out that the veteran is still here, the deal is off. I cannot protect you from the media backlash. That you would have to handle yourself. I understand, Ino. I must say, this is most uncharacteristic of you. With so much power in your hands, the Toko, the Kempeitai, it would have been far easier to handle this matter discreetly. Still, I would not complain. The Chiso Corporation would be more than happy to receive a compensation over the government's requisition of its facilities in Minamata. If I may ask, when will the transfer be? Today, tomorrow, next week? I don't know. You'll get there, I am sure. I admire your discretion, Now, if you excuse me, my timetable waits. Business of conducting business. There's so much text, man. I feel like it's more than usual. How it seems to me is that we have two angles to approach this case. One is through the killer himself, who he was, where he came from, and how he ended up here. His tragic backstory, all that nonsense. The other is through the circumstances of the killing. Why did it happen where it happened, where it did, when it did, and in the way it did. And you think it's a matter of picking the right one? That's just it. If there really is a conspiracy, or at least one going further than we found already, then none of those details would have been left to chance. What I mean is not just about where those angles lead, it's about where they overlap. So what do you suggest? Two teams, each of us leading one. One focused on the criminal, the other on the crime. Alright, let's go with that. So in total, we know three central things about the Takehara here. First, that he killed Yoshikage Shinji in a very specific manner despite no apparent relations between them. Second, he is a member of the armed forces, which is likely the army. And third, he has a half-brother in Tokyo police force willing to assist him. So that gives us two major avenues of investigation. You have the military angle, finding out what the military knew about him and what he did for them, or we can cover the basics. Regardless, our goal is to construct a motivation for his prior actions and from there try and form a reasonable connection to further parties. So given the circumstance of that case, that is, the fact that the suspect has a brother, should we consider that angle in investigation too? At this stage, we are missing so much basic facts. Let's establish a basic profile. That way we can maybe link up the brother as well. Tachi looked down at the paper arrayed on his office desk before him. By all accounts, Takehara was thoroughly average. He had been an average student, both in conduct and exams. He had chosen to enlist in the General Infantry Corps after his final year of school, with no pre-obvious intention of pursuing a specialized role or command. He had been picked up twice for bar fights, but it never amounted to anything more than a night in custody. The only noteworthy thing in that respect was his arrest 6 months ago for the possession of an illegal substance. However, no further information was given on the report, and it seems that he was released the next day without incident. None of the other files had implied anything related to drugs, but Takehara's medical record was not included in the bundle. Track down those medical records. They sound suspicious. As expected, finding his records in the webwork of Japanese bureaucracy was no easy task. The basic details were generally unsurprising. The records described a physically healthy young man, both civilian and military standards. The statistics lined up those records in the autopsy, but the more recent records revealed a pair of intertwined complexities. At some point in the previous years, Ryo had begun to spiral into what the doctors had referred to as a persistent depressive state. Most notably, the only break in the downward trend seems to be around 8 months ago, when Ryo expressed excitement over rekindling the relationship with his brother. But the revelation did not end there. A handwritten note was found shoved in the back of the folder containing a medical record dating 6 months ago. It appeared to be written by a doctor who had examined Takehara. Whether it was intended for his own or the patient's reference, it was unclear. While the specific purpose of the recommendation was not immediately clear to the team, for once their next move was, okay, a spoonful of sugar helps the audit go down. Initially, the West Tokyo Behavior Clinic was reluctant to cooperate with the investigation, but after proper warnings were shown and some cautionary statements about obstruction of justice were given, they meekly stepped aside. Unlike the previous medical records, the file obtained from the clinic were mostly useless. In fact, the most critical file was the first one in the folder, which detailed the reasons they had brought him to the clinic. As the prior police report had hinted, Takehara had recently developed a drug addiction. Takehara was specifically addicted to amphetamines. Not only were these generally more expensive than most illegal drugs, the notes indicated that he had been taking particularly powerful, long-lasting doses. The question was, how could an ostensibly impoverished soldier get addicted to such an expensive drug? Someone must have drugged him instead. authorize the expansion. It's gonna keep costing us more and more, but yeah. Tachi slapped the envelope onto Kodaira's desk. Nothing, he said, exasperated. Over a week of constant inquiries and form requests, and it all amounts to absolutely nothing. The army is known for being quick to share. This can't just be a matter of refusal to share. In fact, I'm sure if they had the ability to, they would have happily blamed Takahara's action on drugs so they could get us to stay away. According to them, they have no records, medical or otherwise, to suggest that he suffered from any infliction at all. It just can't be the case. It would require such an extreme level of negligence to overlook a heavily withdrawn private that there's almost no way it could be unintentional. It's either that or Takahara had access to a steady supply of rare expensive drugs while deployed on a military base, which would also require a pretty damn big crack in security to be possible. So yeah, so which is it? I'm not sure, but I know what comes next. Military precision, my ass. You're certain? He asked. Tachi opened his mouth to reply, but Kodaira beat him to it. Absolutely, sir. The evidence we have compiled based on the profile of Takahara simply cannot be dismissed as circumstantial. Every indication suggests that Takahara's motivations were either facilitated by some personnel from the army or made feasible by some failure within its system. Regardless, the generally poor cooperation shown by the IRAGS, combined with almost pathological insufficient maintenance of records, should provide more than enough grounds to justify a reorientation of the investigation towards the military administration. You couldn't have said it better myself, sir. Well then, get to it. So, Tachi proposed a direct route. He maintained that the army could not waver or slink away from such serious administrative failings if they were brought out into the light. Escalating the issue to the higher echelons of the army command would force a response out of necessity. What they needed to demand, Tachi maintained, was accountability. Kodaira, on the other hand, pushed for an indirect roundabout approach. He argued that they would never get what they needed from the army by operating under the impression that they were on even ground, because they clearly not. Instead, they should go around the army in a sense, direct the correct agency or organization towards the existent evidence of mismanagement. Let's go hold them accountable. Tachi, emboldened by the chief's endorsements of his strategy, oversaw the subsequent correspondence personally. Through his efforts, Tachi wove an accusatory narrative aimed directly at the ministry. For their part, the ministry did seem to take an almost immediate notice of Tachi's handiwork. Just days after the first wave of correspondence, a sealed envelope addressed from the Army of Ministry Tokyo headquarters arrived at the station. Inside was a neatly typed and folded letter addressed to the chief of department. They will do it at the utmost haste. Yeah, so that was a bust, I think. We'll have to do it indirectly, if still possible. Unsurprisingly, waiting for the response of the army devolved into an endless stream of unreturned calls, deflected questions, and deafening silences. The ministry's reply, after forcing its way through the obligatory pleasantries, first took the opportunity to clear themselves of any wrongdoings and write off any suggestions otherwise as hearsay. They maintained that the administrative mishaps the investigation had experienced were side effects of previous logistical restructurings. Naturally, the minister's calm rebuttal sent the investigation team into a frenzy of activity. The lead detectives had no intention of taking the ministry at their word and resolved to take further action. Over their heads, let's go. I don't know if any of that will do anything, but we gotta try. Overwhelmed by the politics of the cabinet, there was only one body left that the investigation could look up to for assistance. The bickering between the Imperial Army and Navy became so intense that it threatened to tear apart the war effort before it even began. To resolve this, the Emperor Meiji ordered the creation of the Imperial General Headquarters. But it seems that didn't go that well, so much for playing nice. We're gonna go the illegal route now. Kill the Emperor. Well, not really, but... The Navy sends its regards in a good or a bad way. Huh. Are we gonna get killed? While the information given by the man from the Navy was not so significant, its potential implications certainly were. It seemed that the appeals to the Imperial General Headquarters by the investigation attracted the attention of the other half of the Japanese armed forces. And according to the testimony of the man, a member of the Navy Ministry, not only was the IGHQ dismissal of the investigation unremarkable, it was downright anticipated. He claimed that the General Headquarters had long since been gutted and largely stripped of its authority by the efforts and ambitions of the army. Through a combination of vocal protest and outright defiance, the army had effectively neutered any potential for an outside party to audit their inner workings. As the headquarters was partially controlled by the army Any mandate the organization attempted to give the IGA would immediately result in half their staff conspiring against them. As such, it was now nearly impossible to bypass the ever-convenient claims of issues of national security that the army gave whenever faced with an inquest. These considerations, while hugely impactful, were well beyond the authority of the Tokyo police to investigate. The two detectives agreed that this would require nothing less than the cabinet-level intervention. Where they disagreed was on which part of the cabinet they should involve. Tachi held that this was significant enough on its own to be brought before the general review of the cabinet. Blow the whistle. No. We've done it by the book. Blow the fucking whistle. Controversy in the cabinet. As expected, the investigation demands for accountability from the army ministry were met with furious opposition, mostly from the office in question. It seemed at the moment the paperwork was placed into the hands of the workers, a storm of controversy engulfed the whole forum. Of course, the mere implication that some subversive action had been carried out by the army kicked off an accompanying flurry of speculation. Ooh, let's see if we survive this. Eventually, after days of debate in the Cabinet Assembly, a new perspective was offered to the floor. The Navy Ministry, which up until that point had remained mostly silent and seemed withdrawn from the issue, put forth their first statement since the whole affair began. But as they quickly made clear, the statement did not come from the Ministry itself in a sense. Rather, they were just giving it on the request of the Navy General Staff Office. But the position put forth by what they thought was the Army's fierce rival was almost unbelievable. The Staff Office justified the relevance of providing their opinion on the basis of their shared membership of the Supreme War Council with the Army Ministry, which they claimed played an essential military and political role. They initially reiterated that the Army's position on the preservation of the independence of organizations and the potential security ramifications, but afterwards made a much stronger claim. They maintained that the right to exclusive authority over the legal investigation of military affairs rested solely with the internal system of the respective branch purely on the basis of military operational security. By this fact alone, they claimed no other non-subordinate office of state could attempt to subvert the judgment of said systems without violating systematic independence. The investigation team was left baffled, none more so than the lead detectives. They had fully anticipated that all the elements of the Navy would have taken this opportunity to assert dominance over their bureaucratic rival. Very suspicious indeed. Now let's follow the next lead. Let's follow the shipping lead. Oh, a fruitful relationship. Sir, the president will see you now. Iwakuro entered and sat down. Major General, thank you for your efforts. I assure you they haven't gone unnoticed. President Bose, I thank you in return. You will see on page 2 and 3 of the reports that HQ has agreed to ship another 1,000 assault rifles. I appreciate your support, but the INA is unmatched in almost 2 to 1. What we need is air power, the same power that won the war in China. What did the Imperial Air Force have to say? Unfortunately, I haven't much good news on that front. Even a squadron of jet fighters will need tens of hundreds of engineers, maintenance workers, and so on. The war will decide the fate of 500 million people. If there is anything you can do with the Air Force, we will remember it. Oh, I think we are sending some jet fighters indeed. At that point, the majority of evidence collected by the investigation pointed to some of international shipping. Wherever an organization found some international commercial interest, private or imperial, the captains of the sea lanes were sure to follow. Why is the Navy moving Army's guns? Why would the Navy reverse their position? Indeed. I'm very curious. Are they working together? For once. Peacetime preoccupation. I think let's go check the civilian shipping maybe. There's bound to be more. So hopefully more opportunity to find the culprit. Now let's check. What do we want to look for? The shipping records. Let's start with that. Also add another elite infantry in here. Should have more than enough, right? Yes. I'm actually thinking mountaineers. Would that not be better? Not really. When the hammer begins to fall, in order to resolve this, the investigation's case further complicated the issue because of the nature of the shipping they were investigating. It existed in a gray area between private industrial and public military shipping. As such, some aspects of the records were under the jurisdiction of civil organizations, granting access to some information. In order to resolve this, Kodaira and Tachi would need to construct a watertight and convincing narrative to gain persistent, unfettered access to the necessary files. Aka heaves and leans back into his precious Midori. But Midori is no schoolmate. Neither is she a courtesan. Midori moans louder than any girlfriend Aka's dad had, and Aka could ride her for hours as much as he pleases. Okay then. All there is now is silence until the familiar hum of the other engines. Ah, thank God. I was like, hey yo, TNO, what are you trying to do here? How's that scar treating you, you magnificent Mongol slayer? Quit it, kid. You don't know anything till you've been in the shit. Ryu replied dryly. Alright, old man. So where am I taking Midori tonight? Out to the port's other side of Tokyo. If we get there by 2, why not ride around in Saitama for a bit? Inside the car are 2 plainclothes officers, silently watching Aka and the bikers for a while now. The flame of youth is often hard to extinguish. Attack helicopter company. Ooh, that could be handy. Start with the domestic ports, investigate those. Looking at her clipboard, Yoshike scanned the list of names, looking for students that hadn't read from the textbook. Her eyes landed on Kojima Keitaro. Keitaro-chan, could you please read for the class? He silently nodded and turning to his book, seemingly having forgotten what paragraph he was to read. Seeing his dilemma, she saved him. The greedy Shang government, she loudly whispered. The greedy Shang government in China, in a bid to distract the people of China from their poor lives, staged an incident along the Lugo Bridge in order to start a war. We responded appropriately. The Shang government and the communists had been fighting with each other, which destroyed China, but they came together to attempt to hold liberation back. After a long war, Pan-Asian unity had prevailed, and the Chinese people were happy. Okay. Control the past. Indeed. The ship with no name. What is so special about there, indeed? What will we find? Uh-oh. If it hasn't been for Detective Kodaira's time in the Navy, if it hadn't been for Kodaira's time in the Navy, the investigation might have passed over the glaring evidence that was situated in the tangled mess of military-industrial shipping. In the records of the ship that Kodaira noticed, the first evidence was of the fraud, but after recognizing its implications, he soon began to check all the other records for similar evidence, which he found in abundance. What gave it away in the end was the ballast. Or ballast? When a cargo ship needed to load or unload substantial amounts of cargo, they would need to make a corresponding ballast or ballast adjustment to keep the ship level and its center of gravity low. But in the case of the Navy's shipping, on many occasions, the ballast adjustment did not match the weight, implying that they were actually hauling more than they claimed. But what was even more alarming was this occurred on a number of occasions with ships carrying military equipment. Oops. The essence of our proposal is this, Takasaki said. We have Manchukuo, you have Japan. A mutual relaxation of our respective grips over our territory would be, I believe, very beneficial. Mitsubishi recently launched a development application for several plants in the outer regions of Xinjiang. And therein lies the issue. You have Manchukuo, we have Japan. One, I must say, is a much greater prize than the other. I'm sorry, Takasaki, but I don't see any way we can make this deal acceptable. Sokomai. The Zaibatsu stick their heels in the ground, as expected. You said you had a backup plan. Indeed, Director. We'll use their heavy hand against them. There are many companies with significant plant investment on the verge of bankruptcy. Thanks to our friend's intolerance of competition, Hitachi will buy them up, establishing ourselves as a major player through ruthless efficiency. If they don't take the carrot, they will feel the stick. We're close to our very first shuffling of the card. Nominally, the influence that the Imperial Navy has in our politics is enough to keep us from keeping too close of an eye on them and their affairs. But this issue has gone on long enough. With enough support and evidence on our side, we have secured a warrant to review cargo manifests. We can now inspect exactly what the army has been receiving. There are, of course, a couple of options as to how we can secure this information. Either we can take the safe route and check the warehouse records and make some interference from there, or we can take a direct, risky approach. Or we can take the direct but risky route and seize the ship. Why not go for the safe option? There's no incentive to go for the difficult one. The Conservatives will introduce the Industrial Freedoms Act. Yeah, let's pass an act while we have the majority. Damn it. After the allegations of corruption within Ino's government, we lose some public approval, stability, a decent amount of stability actually. We still have plenty. Tachi is not a terrible taciturn person in public, but the warehouse shocks even him into silence. The nondescript building is staffed by what would appear to be a normal bunch of workers of assorted nationality. The warehouse functions in a perfectly normal warehouse, just like every other one in the sphere. there's only one problem: the paperwork, of which there is none. The records of the ships which its services are clean. The office to which Kodaira is directed turns out to be more of an exercise on imagination than an actual corporate structure. Tachi is stumped, Kodaira is horrified. The team is shocked into silence. Never in all of their years of life have they seen such an affront against the ethos of the Japanese company. More importantly, without the accompanying documents as physical proof, nothing can be said about the nature of the cargo. But after 20 hours of combing through the warehouse, during which several team members collapse, a series of unmarked boxes is found. Without even the most basic of identifying marks, invoices, or receipts on their body, the way ahead is obvious, if only because there is no other. We'll trace those damn boxes. The boxes, upon examination and after a prolonged, occasional physical struggle with the workers handling them, reveal little. The goods within appear to be perfectly normal military surplus, totally in line with the IGA guidelines for shipping supplies. When traced, an examination of a random selection leads to a mess of origins from army warehouses around the spheres. So confusing, Kodaira and Tachi agree not to follow it. In fact, the spread of the surplus goods leads to a messy web of transactions that it looks like a cover-up. Most boxes of goods will come from a common network linked by a maritime route or geographical proximity. And then it hits them. The content of the boxes is totally random, but the box itself is not. All the boxes have the same packaging. The IGA uses local packaging from its shipping requirements, a common source, in an army warehouse not too far from the warehouse itself. The team readies its gear. Paperwork is made in huge gluts. This could be a big score. I do wonder what we'll find. Tachi flashes his credentials, but the worker does not budge. Annoyed, Tachi goes on a long rant until the worker finally gives in nervously and allows the two detectives to pass. The warehouse is completely empty. The two detectives walk around for a moment in stunned silence, looking for anything at all: weapons, supplies, the kinds of things that they had been tracking to find this place. They find not a single box of shells in the entire building. They immediately begin pulling aside and questioning truly minute skeleton crew. Kodaira eventually demands to see actual documents and records, but is still denied. Tachi goes to investigate the office anyway, but finds nothing. Even after prying open locked cabins, he finds no records, nothing. They have found so much more and so much less than they had hoped for. So there's nothing actually? All the goods that they've been shipping is just fake? This has become much bigger than they really ever wanted. They have crossed the regular threshold of risk to a point where their safety may be compromised. There are clearly very important and very high-ranking people who would be willing to take drastic measures to keep this quiet, whatever this really is. The debate soon proves to be extremely divisive. Many became extremely worried about whether they might be in too deep and if it might just be best to drop the whole thing. Others insist that the only way to ensure their own safety is to continue pressing harder. Every moment that this loose end stays untied, they become more at risk of retaliation. The only sure way to both be safe and to make sure that justice is served is to strike first. Eventually, only one conclusion is reached. Something has to be done. This case cannot go cold. After hours of debate and scheming, Tachi finally speaks up with a truly insane idea. This is clearly much deeper than anticipated. The military is involved somehow. If they do not act soon, they could be in the sights of some powerful and very dangerous people. Thus, the only course of action is to strike fast and, more importantly, strike hard. If the suspects will not cooperate, which they have shown they have no plans to do, then the investigators will have to get the smoking gun themselves. A vulnerable base, one assigned to the unit which the warehouse supposedly belonged to. A quick raid in and out. Kodaira listened carefully, and though many are wary of the plan, he speaks in favor. He talks about the contacts he has made over the years, people who could get men and supplies necessary for such an ambitious operation, people who have dealt with unsavory and dangerous things before. Kodaira is, after all, one of the most seasoned members of the team. Tachi thanks Kodaira but insists he knows his own plan and the people he wants to carry it out. He is young, fresh, and the wild card. No, let's go with Kodaira. I trust him. They both want this to succeed. The investigators decide that Kodaira, as the most experienced of the detectives, should be the one to seek out allies. Tachi accepts this judgment with only little argument, and Kodaira thanks the team and promises not to let them down. He skips formalities and makes it clear that this is a dire situation and he cannot disclose too much. His contacts understand. This is not the first time they have to exercise discretion. He finds two potential allies that interest him most. The first are a few policemen in the Tokyo Police Department who are personal friends of Kodaira. Though he suspects the conspiracy may even reach as the police department, he would and has trusted these friends with his life, and they can gather the non-corrupted and loyal officers of the department. The other contact is riskier, but perhaps more rewarding. He has managed to gather a short list of discontent and slightly hot-headed officers who do much for a chance for advancement. Yeah, but they're sooner to betray us for advancement too. No, the men of the department will be our allies. We'll go with that. I'm nervous, man. I hope this works. Tohoku Winters. Sure, we got plenty of political power. Although, maybe the boy's got a right idea. Yeah, let's listen to him. Made contact. It's time to move in, man. I wonder what the lobbying thingy... Ah, there it is. It might still be too late for this. The house will be reshuffled in 24 days. Industrial Freedoms Act, we get political power, bonuses. Oh, but the regulations decrease and political parties decrease. I don't know, man. We have excellent relations with the... let's demand... Well, let's court the Kidoite. They like us anyway. Taichi and Kodaira looked at each other grimly before they entered the office of their boss. They had worked hard to ensure they had the proper allies and contacts to make this operation a reality. As soon as they explained the planned raid, the boss immediately began tearing into it. He was extremely skeptical that it could work at all, and was worried about how terrible the repercussions could be if it did fail. He was a man who played by the rules, and rules were not terribly well defined here. The discussion was on the brink of becoming a full-blown argument, but through deft teamwork and excellent planning, Kodaira and Tachi were able to hold their grounds without pushing too hard. There was one catch: the boss was not convinced that the team had all the people it needed to carry out the raid. He ordered the two detectives to gather more allies. I think I trust a criminal more than a politician. Yeah, some might say it's the same thing, but there's any nuance. Okay, ready when you are. Make a quick call, and the Yakuza bosses agreed to help us out. The investigation team has gathered a cabal of uneasy friends and allies. The planning is in its final stages. There remains, however, one titanic decision: to raid the army or to raid the navy. The two have put together aside their differences for mutual gain, but their general separation and traditional rivalry means that only one can be focused on. Let's go for the army. They have more information. Oh, was this a success? Nice. We don't have any foreign conflicts yet. We've only been playing for a year, and I feel like we're nearing the end of the video. Kodaira emphasized the fact that it would be easy to track the physical shipment. The team began to move. Let's go. The team worked overtime behind the scenes to get the modifications to the gun working, augmented sights, new chambers, new magazines, with all the flashy new additions. Damn, we're gonna do like a heist. That is cool as hell. And we're bugging everything as well. The police were watching, and after all, and soon Japan would be watching too. Offers came flowing in one by one in meetings and through letters and anonymous and not so anonymous offers in bars and hallways. And behind the closed doors of the surveillance rooms and the meeting rooms, the web grew to encompass army ministries, both small and large, logistics, intelligence, literally half the infantry units in the sphere, the Air Force. Most of these agencies had attempted to use counter-espionage to cloak their activities as per protocol. The Trojan asset, as Tachi has taken to call them, had neutered the efforts. Some links on the web, the cluttered board, were thicker than most, but by far the largest individual connections were linked to an agency whose identity continued to elude the team until one offer, written in hastily scribbled handwriting, came up with an exact match for font and writing style. A senior officer in the Kenpai Tai, their biggest internal security competitor. Kodaira and Tachi looked at each other, and laughter echoed down the halls. After all their efforts taken to secure their target, it appeared the end of this investigation would be an internal affair. A very internal affair. I hope after the reshuffling... reshuffled, do we still have enough? Yeah, we still have enough. Good. Tachi and Kodaira continued to pore over the documents. They had the major points now. But it was time to take down all the names, not just the big ones. They needed to make sure that nobody would escape once the music played. There are so many layers to this crime. In the end game now, the names just kept coming. The list growing every day. And it started to look less like a chain and more like a massive web of generals, politicians, officers, and now on top of it all, admirals. Tachi and Kodaira had gone from worried to completely panicked. Now they were dealing with not one, but two different branches of the military police who would absolutely annihilate them if they found out what the two detectives were doing. Let's hope we survive. At least we get a bill passed. Some members of the Diet reassess their support for our government must continue to manage our relations. Okay, let's improve relations with pretty much everyone. We got the points anyway. Everything hinged on this raid. They couldn't be trusted with a gun, let alone the most important raid in the history of the East. A soldier was not the one to get it done either. He just followed orders of the state and killed some civilians along the way. It had to be a detective. Kodaira and Tachi jumped out. Tachi was a sprightly, naive Osaka transfer, certainly quick with a handgun and quick with spirit, but he wasn't experienced with commanding groups and not a cynic like every officer in Tokyo. The boy was used to the small-town yakuza activities in Osaka and didn't have too much dirt on his hands. Most importantly, he's a meticulously careful planner. Nothing will go unthought or unwritten. The other hand was Kodaira, old, broken, cynical. The blood on his hand never dried, and his rage against the corruption of the state, the corruption that had killed so many, never ceased. He was a loose cannon, but perhaps that was exactly what we needed. Let's go with Tachi. I like him for this job. Also report on the first quarter. Oh, the Germans are trying to outmaneuver us in our own backyard. How fucking dare you? Raid plan. Sometimes it's appropriate to fight fire. Bring out rifles. Yeah. No need to keep us lightly armored. Bust in and find the goddamn enemies. Yeah, we're not gonna leave anything up to chance. We don't have long. Let's get in already. I'm very excited to see how this turns out. Goddamn, they keep edging me. The officers silently marched over to the door where the noise originated from and prepared themselves to forcefully enter. In a great crash, the officers burst through the door and flooded the room with glaring torches and threatening yells of violence. The IGA man in the dim-lit and damp room caught in the process of incinerating piles of what seemed to be incriminating evidence. Put your arms where I can see them. It's over, boys. Malaya elections. Won by whom? Are they still a part of us, though? Yeah. You better stay that way. Oh yeah, while acceptable isn't quite what we would have wanted. However, he has been found slightly too friendly towards Indonesia to our liking, along with being too radical and not submissive enough. Nevertheless, the Prime Minister is still relatively collaborative, which means that the situation is stable enough for the time being. Hopefully he won't cause too much trouble indeed. Charging in with shields, the officers stormed in at ferocious speed and were pummeling the men they were clearly searching for. From Detective Kodaira's position, they were now dotted around the ruinous room and attempting to arrest the squirming men. A worrisome flush washed over Kodaira. Or Kodiara, there we go. I've been misspelling his name every single time. Every muscle in his body tensed as he heard the wails of the IGA men from behind cover. However, just before his blood could curdle at the sight of the death of these men, it became clear that these officers had detained and pinned them to the ground before they could so easily welcome their doom. They let out screams of defeat, muffled under the subdued force of the officers. Looks like it was largely a success for now. Detective Tachi sat in at his cheap desk, smoking a cigarette and taking a moment to relax. Spending hours analyzing printed information on documents, Tachi had removed his tie and unbuttoned his shirt to cool down his hot and bothered chest. However, as the sun began to rise in the morning, Tachi had a moment of realization. He scribbled down some notes in a frantic haste, dashing the pen across the empty room. Once he was finished writing, he just yeeted that shit. He had scrounged up the required evidence to incriminate the plotting corruption in the rank of the IGA. Oh, Malagasy is acting up. I think we're gonna have a geopolitical situation soon. The dust settled, the guard accounted for, the debriefs finished. It had almost been too easy to seize the things they needed. Information, the executive management, and the wide-reaching warrant for further investigation of the armed forces for suspected treason, illegal trafficking, and conspiracy against the emperor. An uneasy peace reigned in the meeting room. The two began thanking the many people who had made this investigation possible, and Kodaira, stuffy as ever, bowed formally in gratitude. But how would this investigation be kept going without lethal consequences? Tachi introduced the plan to keep the armed forces accountable in the public eye, a 4-hour conference with the press of Japan, so wide-scale and exhaustive in detail that it would be irrefutable. Kodaira ended on a cryptic note. Oh, so it is Kodaira. No one knew what would happen to the Kokusei when this was finished, but it was unlikely to be pleasant, and as for themselves, Ominous man indeed. He's so edgy, man. Oh, the end of French Madagascar. Perfect. Is it time for us to... There's no yet. They're gonna fall apart soon. Oh, I forgot to pump them out. That was in my previous... In my first version. That's my bad. Should have pumped out way more units. Crunch the numbers and worry about security later. Yeah. Interrogating the captives now. Clara looked through the case files. Everything seemed to be in order. Most of the captives they had arrested through the raid had been career bureaucrats fattened off government money. A cozy life and the military with limited training in combat would make them easy targets. He then leafed through a well-worn copy of the list of key performance indicators the team had outlined. If the targets were reminded that they served no purpose except as hostages for the army and navy, which was true but only to an extent, they might prove more willing to negotiate. So my friend, do you know why you're here? Kodaira sighed heavily before continuing. He gave an apology for dragging the entire team into danger and expressed sincere regret that this could have ended up as simply another murder case. You can only pray. Oh, Malagasy rebels. Is it time for us? Politics makes strange bedfellows. In fighting for the liberation of the people of Madagascar from imperials, we rely on the assistance and intelligence of the Americans. We must leverage this intelligence in such a manner that benefits us while containing American influence. Reinforce the ground game. Interrogate special advisors, or integrate them rather. Yeah. And emphasize strategic importance. The press release finally, Tachi and Kodaira made their way to the podiums. Kodaira did the majority of the talking, giving a somber greeting before getting into the actual investigation. He described the initial motive and how the case had slowly escalated further on they had gone. Eventually, he got to what would really turn heads. He described the discovery of a vast network of illegal arms dealing and general corruption. The instant those words left his mouth, he was drowned out by shouts and yells from the crowd. The questions of journalists, the gasps of workers, and the anger of the army and navy servicemen were far too much. The two detectives had to be escorted back to safety. They could no longer have any assurance of their own physical security. It was too late for that. The things people do to stop the truth. Tachi had finally decided something needed to be done. He stood up and addressed all the team members present. He said he knew how bad it felt, how scary it was, but they would be okay. Their foes had no reason to kill him. If anything, if they killed the team, they would only be proving their own guilt. However, he said that revenge often outweighed reason, and to keep alert. Would our enemies dare to stoop so low? Well, yeah, of course they would. They're politicians and stuff, man. Kodaira sighed. He had been in this meeting for over an hour, enduring hatred, fear, and absolute contempt for those who supposedly had the same ideas and goals as he did. The meeting had begun to fall apart completely. Kodaira talked less and less, and with shock he noted that the representatives had started to argue with each other as much as they were arguing with him. Soon they seemed to have forgotten him entirely and were yelling at each other with seething rage. Each blamed the branch that some other politician was representing. Kodaira had not realized until now just how deep he and his team had struck at Japan. The branches and fruits were not all that were spoiled. Their very roots were rotting away. Is there anyone innocent in this entire damn government? The men sipped from their tea, making small talk that neither cared for in the slightest. The clock above their heads ticked slowly, each little tick a second closer to total chaos. Around them, the department was going into full lockdown. All the evidence, captives, and documents were being moved around, shuffled away, and hidden in locations undisclosed to even the most of the officers. We're pretty much bracing for D-Day now. Oof. Are we even going to survive the aftermath of what you just found out? Kodaira and Tachi should have been celebrating at this point. Their prime targets have been proven demonstrably guilty, but two niggling issues haunted them, two loose ends begging for resolution. The first was drawn from the use of several code words, drawn from conversation and interrogations with various military staff. Kamakura Buddha and Kyoto Golden Temple, and Kyoto Silver Temple. All code word owners were spoken in a deferential tone and appeared to have pulled strings behind the string pullers. In fact, even the Imperial General Headquarters appeared to be innocent. So who was above the headquarters? Second was this, the army and navy. The civilian governments, the biggest enemies, were busy collapsing. So why was the civilian government falling to pieces along with them? And did anyone really know? I want to know what happened. I don't like what this... Yeah, everyone's just complicit, man. Kodaira's speech was short and to the point to prevent further internal interference. Scarcely had the meeting ended when a note was passed to him by a staffer. It was impossible to even catch his disappearing outline in the crowds of journalists. Stop before you are encircled and destroyed. Your fight was brave, but it ends here. We are watching. Yours, the 1,000 Temples. Kodara, our leaders in the Navy are in trouble. Orders from the Diet assigned to Fusoshima. Where the hell is that? Kodara and Tachi were running out of time. The crisis meeting stretched into the long hours. Many of the team who had let their unspoken fears take hold of them wanted to shut down the investigation before their own heads would wound up on executive platters. Arrest warrants and lists of suspects were hastily compiled, and the team divided into ministry sections to tackle each list. To hit the government as hard as they could. If they couldn't manage a full sweep of the 1,000 temples, they could at least nab enough for them to kill the momentum. We're pretty much working for our goddamn lives. It's either we collapse the government or we die. In orders crafted to maximize humiliation, the Bureau essentially dressed down the entire team for acting above their pay grade, station, and status before the Emperor. This was fairly normal treatment and to be expected, but what was surprising the team was the blunt demand of the corpus of the investigation's evidence all to be moved to the Bureau headquarters and be safekept for an indefinite period. The reasons cited were the preservation of the dignity of the government and the Emperor. In ordinary instances, the orders ordering them to stop could at least have been punished, but this order was classified so highly that to release it would have been an immediate death sentence for most of Kodaira and Tachi's team. It was an outrage and an impediment of justice, but you could admire the handiwork. Stabbed in the back, and they're to blame. They give love a bad name. I get that reference. Government lockdown. Uh-oh. The government wasn't above the scandal. It was right there in the mud with the rest with them. We just have to chase everyone. There's no innocent people at all. The Second Caribbean Legion declared war. Can we join in with that or not? No, we only have them Malagasy to fight. Oh, they trained Tachi in rudimentary middleman techniques in hostage negotiation seminars. But Tachi had never expected to use them like this. Two teams of the most powerful agencies in Japan were snapping at each other, with members of his own team desperately trying to get both sides to stand down. Hands to holsters, the police department held its breath. Looking at them too, Tachi had an idea. Didn't the art of war say that the enemies were best defeated when divided? And didn't they possess significant reserves of evidence that everyone wanted, but only one agency could keep? Divide, conquer, and survive. The riches continue, although I don't know how long they'll last. Been trying to buy our debt down, but feel like it's only going to be temporary. And one last gambit. Every side is fighting each other. Let's see if our boys can survive. The offer was transparent, appeasement at best, but was really the best that they could have managed. And even the dire straits that every branch of government were even in an offer. And given the dire straits that every branch of government were in, even an offer like this could easily be the best one of the Diet might receive. The proposal was simple. If worded to be long-winded and noble to flatter the Diet. Given the conflict of interest elsewhere in the government, the Diet was the best organization left to safeguard evidence regarding the investigation. Their cooperation would surely shield them from such of the upcoming chaos. Tachi and Kodaira worded the letter to be just right, hopefully appealing to the sense of urgency and desire to remain safe that the Diet members all felt. We've researched anti-air. That means I need to produce anti-air. Several of his old contacts, people he had once considered true friends, flat out refused to meet with him. Eventually, however, he had met with a few of them. Those who knew that there was no other option. The offer was simple. They and their soldiers in the army and navy would safeguard evidence pertinent to the investigation. In return, their reputation could still be safeguarded, and perhaps they would survive and make it. Every time he made the offer, he knew it was a lie, but the people he talked to were so desperate for any chance to escape, they agreed. Legally, this meeting was not taking place in an outpost that did not exist between men that were not there. You know who we are, yes? Yes, sir. Then I shouldn't need to explain. How fucking stupid would it be to support the communists? Not necessarily. We don't need or want the AKFM to win. That would be ridiculous. But we can always use them to fight. If we want them to fight well, they'll need our help. And if by our intervention the AKFM stock in a coalition increases, what do you think would happen? It's a risk, sir. But think of it this way. If we can push the AKFM to fight where we don't want our boys to fighting, then that gives us a better chance of winning the war on our terms. Sure. Yeah. Why not? It's still not done, man. Tachi decided to, for once in this entire order, to cut the shit and talk frankly. No more flowery language. He sent out the offer as so. The Bureau of Public Order would assist in the storage and safekeeping of the evidence, but the hostile and potentially corrupt forces within the government could not seize them. In exchange, Tachi promised that if the evidence was secured, then the investigation could be turned to politically benefit the Bureau. I feel like our boys are just gonna die. And now we release debate, hope for the best. Oh. Divide, conquer, and repeat. And Madagascar. This is blowing up. How many units can I send them? I could send 3. So let's pump out our helicopters. But that will be it for today. I'll continue on with probably finding out what the hell is going on with the corruption scandal. Next episode, we've been recording for almost 3 hours. It's going to be a long-winded video, I feel like. And now watch me after I edit it down. It's going to be like 15 minutes. But yeah, that will be it for today. Hopefully, I'll see you next time. I'm very curious to see where this leads us to. And yeah, have a nice day, man. Bye-bye.